I'm going to invite you just to come into the room fully, to feel into your body. And I'm going to begin to speak about the throat chakra. And so the throat chakra, for me, is one of the most interesting points, in the 7 chakras within our body. And the reason it's one of the most interesting is because it's the one that causes the most trouble for just about everyone. Just about everyone. So in the highest state, the throat chakra is a balancer. It's an open door that connects basically the consciousness of the mind and the consciousness of the heart. It connects the head to the body in a more human way. This whole body-mind connection that everyone was talking about in the 80s and 90s. So when the throat chakra is open, we can feel into the body, we feel into the heart, we can feel into the hara, and we're connected to ourselves. But most people don't live in this way. Most people live with a closed or semi-closed throat chakra, or they live in some realm of the shadow of the throat chakra. And so let's go into this in a little bit more detail. So as all of you sit here with me, I'm going to invite you just to feel into your throat and just notice what you feel there. Do you feel complete openness, and spaciousness, and light? Does it feel completely calm and still and receptive? And if so, then the throat is probably mostly open. Now, for many of us, we don't feel that in the throat. We feel a little bit of tension there. A little bit of tension. And that tension is actually the seat of the superego, the critic, the inner judge. So just as we were speaking before, every chakra center has a divine mind, which in this case is openness, like a balancer and an openness. It's like a gate that is open to heaven and earth, to discernment and clarity and the love of the heart and the strength of the belly. So that's how the throat chakra manifests on the level of divinity, of its divine expression. And it just happens to be the chakra of expression. And the throat doesn't really have much to express, because when the throat is open, the heart speaks, and the heart speaks freely and clearly without self-consciousness. When the throat is closed, the superego is in charge. The superego is the one who's in charge of that door. And it has this little dance, this balancing dance within the superego of, if I trust, I'm open. If I'm fearing, I'm closed. And so that's kind of the game of the superego is it safe to speak? Is it safe to be here? And so many people have this critical voice that's judging one's size, like our body weight, our look, like our face, like do I look like I'm a beautiful model on 17 or Cosmopolitan magazine, or like with me, it's like, oh, you look like an old man, or whatever. So like when I look at myself, because my heart is open, the throat is open, I look at myself and I smile. I don't have a thought of age. I don't have a thought of being fat or skinny or this type of thing. There's no judge inside, judging Craig, attacking Craig. And so for most of us, though, we have this tension in the throat. Again, the realm of the superego. And the superego, like Freud taught, is closing the door to the id. I don't fully agree with Freud's model, but it's good in this case. So we need to keep everything repressed. We need to keep our sexual desire repressed. We need to keep our desire for food and cake repressed. We need to keep our desire to explode in traffic and go, what we call here in the United States, going postal and ripping someone's head off. And so it's not that the superego is bad in any way. it's an aspect of consciousness, of egoic consciousness, whose job is to keep us safe. And this is very good if we live in a dangerous tribal society, if we live in, like Nazi Germany, or, um, when Russia was moving into communism and under the rule of Stalin or Lenin, like people had their throat chakras shut and they weren't going to speak up. And even in Russia now, it's like if you speak up against, Mr. Putin, you might end up in jail. And so a lot of people, say in a country with, oppressive regimes, wherever that is, this, you can consider the United States a repressive regime, or Russia, or wherever. We have this energy of truth within us that says, no, humans are meant to be free. We're meant to be who we are, to express ourselves and to have freedom and to be able to do what we want. And so we have this force within our belly, and this is the force that oftentimes you'll see in revolutions. It stands up and it's shouting. But before the revolution, the throat chakra is shut. It's saying, no, 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 don't say that, or you'll end up in jail. You'll end up in jail. And, I want to be clear here. Just because the throat is fully open, that doesn't mean it's necessarily we're speaking the truth. Sometimes when the throat is fully open, the first thing that comes forward is, again, what Freud described. It's the id. Like your superego holds back your anger. But if the superego kind of takes a nap, and we give ourselves full permission to unload on our children, then we become an abusive person. We cause great pain, to the child or to our neighbor, to wife or husband or partner. And so again, superego, it's not that it's a bad thing. But what happens in the throat as you begin to shift in how you relate to your consciousness, how you relate to yourself, how you relate to your feeling realm, not out of fear, but out of trust, the mind shifts from being, the throat chakra shifts from being dominated by fear and the superego to being dominated by discernment. The space of the true mind, the third eye, can be a realm of great discernment, and also dominated by love in the heart, and then with the making the Holy Trinity here within us, the quality of strength deep in the belly. So when the throat is open fully, and we've done our healing work, so it's not just open like egoically, where you're giving yourself permission to say whatever you want because you're a jerk or an arrogant person or a narcissist. But when the throat chakra has been healed and upgraded, it becomes this balancing force for the Holy Trinity within, of clarity and discernment, love in the heart, and then quiet strength and power in the belly. And so the beautiful thing about the throat chakra is it gives you clear, consistent feedback when you're shutting down, when you're ignoring the truth, when you're fearing. And so let me give an example of this. I was once on an airplane with my father. And my father, well, he was a drinker. I mean, he was an alcoholic. He was a great man, but he had a broken heart and a broken body. And so he drank a lot. And I was on this airplane with him. We were actually going to France. We were going to spend some time together. And I was feeling very close to him and open. And out of the innocence of my heart and out of the quiet strength of my belly, I saw my father drinking constantly on this trip. And I asked him, I just looked at him just from a place of pure innocence, zero agenda, but pure innocence. I said, Dad, why do you drink? And it totally shocked him. It took him completely off guard because I said it in such an innocent way, such a pure way. But as soon as I said that, I realized, oh boy, like, this is a scary moment. Because my dad, he was a big guy, and he was like an army guy. He was big and he was strong, and he had really aggro emotions. He was the kind of guy you would never ask that question to. And so I felt my throat chakra just be like, you know, and it's just like this swallowing pit, you know, within me, and this fear started to arise. But of course, me being a student of truth, you know, I felt into that pit. I opened, and I simply held space and listened to him. And I have an interesting job because, you know, I ask people tough questions all the time. And the first thing I see is they clench in their throat, they swallow in their throat. Sometimes, you know, especially people who wear like big V-neck shirts, a lot of women do, the whole, like, their heart and the throat will just turn bright red, almost with a fire / a fear. Sometimes I'll feel, or I'll notice intuitively emotional fear just kind of creep up, like right from their belly up to their throat, and it goes into their jaw, and there's like this clenching. For some people it's very subtle, some people it's very overt. And so again, the throat chakra will give you instant feedback. Instant feedback. And just how people relate. Like if I ask someone a truthful question, like, hey, like, what do you feel about this experience? And so I'm inviting them to look down into their body, to the realm of feeling. And a lot of people they just look right up to their head. So instead of going down through the throat, they ask their head how they feel. So again, this is an avoidance. So the superego says it's not safe to feel. It's safe to analyze, to think about, to have a dogma or philosophy. A lot of people go up into their head and say, Craig, I'm thinking for the right answer that you want. And I say, no. Don't give me the right answer. You know, that's in your head that you think I want. That's self-consciousness. That's the mind of superego. Open your throat and come into your body and feel. And feel. And so in the path of spiritual awakening, so many people think that spiritual awakening has to do with the mind being totally silent and having like a perfect philosophical outlook toward life. And while the mind being silent is one of the qualities of spiritual awakening, you know, what's necessary for the mind to actually become silent is for you to first come into the body and fearlessly be willing to feel and experience everything within you. Now, this is the greatest fear of the superego. Greatest fear of the ego is just, no. If I feel it all, I might go crazy. I'll quit my job. I'll leave this relationship. I'll become homeless. You know, I'll die. You know, for a lot of people, there's so much fear and there's so much trauma in the body. They say, if I open that door, I'll die. I have to keep it shut. And because of this thought of the superego, this creates one of the primary veils of spiritual awakening. Primary veil, which is I am my thoughts and it's unsafe to feel. I am my thoughts, like I'm my age, I'm my gender, I'm so-and-so, I have this job, and you know, you just identify with egoic ideas. Versus spiritual awakening, enlightenment, asks you to identify with your presence. And the presence is in the body. A little bit of it here, sure. You know, I mean, this opens, becomes a great space of awareness. But awareness is not just here in the third eye. Awareness is throughout the body, the subtle body. And so through the practice of surrender, which is the superego's greatest fear, we open into the body. We open into direct experience. One can never be awake if we're not connected to direct experience. Now, at some stage on the path, the superego becomes sophisticated, and we begin to develop what I call the spiritual superego. So the spiritual superego is still holding on tightly, intensely to a sense of control. And it likes to take on spiritual practices like mindfulness. Most people on planet Earth who practice mindfulness are practicing not from the heart, but rather they practice from the superego. There's a little clinch there. It's like I'm witnessing my thoughts. I'm noticing which are good and which are not. I'm silently judging them, but I'm trying to be non-judgmental. And so the superego, will be like, if you look at 80% of the people on a Vipassana retreat, they're just like jammed into their superego, just trying real hard to meditate right, to do the meditation right. And the beautiful thing about a long retreat, like a Vipassana retreat or Zen retreat, or a retreat that I do that brings lots of grace, the time of a Zen retreat or Vipassana retreat, the silence or grace, oftentimes just pushes the throat chakra open and pushes us directly into our direct experience. And in our direct experience, without a superego, you feel completely. This is what oneness is. Oneness is you feel and you experience completely, without a wall between you and the tree, you and the sky, between you and the hugeness of love and compassion in the heart. So as we open into the realm of oneness, we feel directly, we experience directly. And as we descend more fully into the body and face our greatest fears, which are held deep in the belly, then the superego can really begin to die. And we lose self-consciousness. We step into the realm of what the Buddha might call no self. No self. Many people can experience oneness in the mind, but if they feel in their throat, there's still a subtle fear to open to everything. To open to everything. Because, my God, if I open to everything, it'll be too much. When the throat is trusting and open, and we step down into the greater fears, which are, housed in the hara, true self-consciousness begins to die, not temporarily, but permanently, in the throat chakra. And so I could go on and on about this, but I think this is probably enough for today. Let me just take a quick glance, because I did write some notes just to make sure that I don't forget anything. One thing I would like to acknowledge is that as the throat chakra begins to trust, and what happens is we realize, oh, my mind is one voice, but there's a voice in my heart and a voice in my belly. And I have a choice which heart to listen to. I have a choice to listen to my mental mind, my emotional mind, my fearing mind. Or I also have a choice to listen to the mind of clarity, the mind of prajna, like this great heart wisdom in the heart. It's very silent. So these voices, much more silent. The voice of truth in the belly, again, very silent voice. So as the throat opens, again, the experience of oneself radically begins to change as you shift from being mentally based or emotionally based, like fear-based, to being prajna-based, heart-based, where the heart speaks through you. And eventually through this path of the of the throat opening, you really are faced with this choice. Again, there's that choice at the gate, being open or closed. Am I listening to the truth of my being? When you listen to the truth of your being in the heart and in the belly, the mind, which was once quite busy with thought and fear, becomes silent. And now we're stepping into the higher realms of abiding awakening.